Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe. Now introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Caines, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe. My name's Ed Mann, and today we're joined by Michael Budd.
Hello.
How are you doing, Mickey B?
I'm good, thanks, Ed Mann. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Michael Budd.
Very formal.
We all like Mr. Michael Budd.
That's me.
So how are things going in the life of Budd at the moment, man?
Yeah, good actually. Probably said last time, but deployed the big project I was working on just after January, and there was a bit of chaos in that next month where there was lots of things to iron out, and but now sort of in a much more stable release, so it's a less stressful time, to be honest, which is good.
So would you say then you've made that transition now from obviously when you deploy something, it's that all guns blazing, this is the first release. Yeah. Now you're more in a case of, you're handling a bit more tech debt now. You can go back and look at things and kind of see a bigger picture of what's the future as opposed to kind of, what the beginnings are. You've kind of made it a new chapter.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's right. And there's just a lot of things that, like, obviously you do testing and stuff, but there's a lot of things you just you don't know until the real event happens. And I think specifically a lot of the payment stuff. I told you, we've got like 2 payment gateways integrated. And
having one's hard enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously I've tried to make the code so that obviously most of the code is the same. Really, you're just taking the payment, and then what happens after that is the same for either payment gateway. So that's combined sort of shared code. But the IPM bits are unique to each vendor, and just making sure that the right things do happen when they come in. And I did have a little bit of fun with that, actually. And you kind of think, well, you tested in sandbox mode, how could it possibly go wrong? But it did. So only for one of them, and it was, the situation was recoverable. But, I'm keeping my eyes on those daily. And there's just so many other things that now either we couldn't really have predicted, or just, I don't know. I mean, for example, things like we've got a lot more subscribers on board now. So, I was testing before with like 1 or 2, and then now it's like a lot. And many of those things, when they scale up, you have to test them again. So things like, for example, emails. I'm now monitoring any emails that aren't going out, and why aren't they going out? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's but like you say, I have been able to take a little bit of a step back after sorting out a lot of those issues, and now it's kind of, I can take a bird's eye view and see where we need to go next. So.
Well, that's awesome news, man. And it's actually interesting. So you mentioned like the payment stuff and everything.
Yeah.
And that was actually a recent episode that Adam Watham did on Full Stack with a guy who was talking about a lot about payments. And it is an interesting one. I think anytime you want money, people are going to get angry. Yeah. Obviously, because they aren't going to want to pay, more, and they don't want to be double charged, and you don't want to double charge them, and you feel guilty if, your system does kind of sometimes, mess up or whatever. And it is interesting kind of, even like the fact of a network connection, the fact that, you require callbacks to come back from, maybe your IP, from whatever provider you're using, and maybe it doesn't happen, and then you get and you have to rectify it yourself manually, and one of the things is, to never use transactions within anything to do with payment stuff, I found, because you don't want to roll back and, because maybe something does fail halfway through, and what happened is you've already sent off to please charge this person X amount of money. Yeah. And you have no recollection of it in your database. So you are actually better off having almost, going against everything you kind of feel, that you normally would have, just because of the fact that because you're doing side effects, you need to know about those side effects, and you can't revert back.
100%. And what I did to tackle that was sort of, and I have to say both, because we're using Go Cardless and Stripe, and both of those are really good in terms of the webhooks they provide. So I'm logging, when the payment is first requested, and then when the payment actually goes through, and then when the payment actually goes through to the bank. So keeping a track on all that, and actually I log all the webhooks as well. They're all stored in one table, and I can look through those. So I know I could log into either one of those, but to have them all in one place and be able to see exactly what's going on, and like you say, logging stuff, even if the payment hasn't gone through, then you've got a trail to go back on and find out what's happened. So yeah, completely agree.
And so is there anything else, new features on the horizon, or is it a lot more bug fixes at the moment? What's kind of your general...
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of more stuff to come, but it's mainly more going to be integration with third-party applications. So obviously, one of the main things that a lot of our subscribers want to do is export data to their own CRM of choice. So we're doing that for Zoho at the moment, and we're working on an app for Salesforce, and Dynamics is coming, but there's so many out there. And ideally, what we would like to have done was have a you sort of export it to one application that could then filter out to all the different ones. But unfortunately, at the moment, we've not been able to find anything out there that does that. We did find something called, is it Zapier? Have you heard of that?
No, what's that?
So I think it's a similar kind of thing that you basically you export the data, and then whoever's using it can basically then say, well, I've got these other products. I'm using Dynamics or whatever. I'm using this. So then it gets then filtered down to those different third parties as well. So you kind of export it once, and then it goes off to all these other different streams. But with that, the end user has to have like a subscription to Zapier. I'm probably pronouncing it completely wrong. But so something like that would have really been great, but we couldn't ask our subscribers to pay for that as part of it, really. So at the moment, we're kind of, making code for each individual case. But if we could find something that would fill that would be great. So if anyone knows of anything, please do.
Please let us know.
Yeah.
Please help them a Mickey out.
Yeah. But in terms of functionality, we've got advanced filtering that's coming out. That's just been, it's a lot of stuff just to check that's going to go right. And mainly my apprehension with that one is that because of the way it works, that someone could execute a query that will just die, or worst, just take forever. So I want to make sure there's safeguards in there to stop that.
Yeah, are you like containerizing almost like the queries that, they must, run in a certain time and have like a timeouts and things like that to ensure?
Yeah, I mean, I started looking at Postgres, and I know one way I could do it is that you would set the timeout limit before the query, and then you could change it back again after the query, but I'm sure there's a better way of doing that. So
I think even in PDO, you can actually set to say, look, if you don't hear anything back from the server at this time, pronounce it as gone.
Great. Okay, so that might be a way of going.
I think it can just throw an exception or something. Because as you say, you don't. I mean, the trouble is, though, is then obviously maybe some days your queries will be that long, and then it's like, oh, you're putting this, limit on it. But it is good to have that safety limit that they're going to just start. But it's also making sure that these queries aren't just idly around the server, and what they, that they clean up properly if they do decide to cancel them and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. But one thing I would say, and I know this isn't really going to shock anyone, but we have noticed a huge impact on, obviously, with bugs coming down and the level of subscriptions going up. I know that's not really shocking.
You don't like bugs? What the hell? Is that about?
Crazy, but it shows that they do have a big financial impact. So you can't be complacent on those things, and it could be little things as well. So and then the next step after that is we're hoping to like white label our application so other people can basically use it to sell on to other people. So that's going to keep me busy for a long time, I think. So
that's cool.
How about you? What are you?
Things are going really well. Thanks, man. I mean, first things first. If you're listening to this relatively recently from when it came out, or hopefully when it comes out, Twitch are streaming streaming all 831 Power Rangers episodes back to back.
There is. Wow.
There is. This is all seasons up to the latest. I've just read an article on it. It is quite amazing that they're actually So because of the new movie that's coming out, they decided that they're going to go through the whole back catalogue, and that's just amazing. That's in the background. That's got to be done,
Yeah,
just
absolutely
reminiscing on childhood.
Yeah,
I just love the toy, man. Did you ever have the toys?
I did, had a few, yeah.
Yeah, like you had the gun thing that you could make into, have all the bits, and then you have like the actual toy that you could actually like break out. And it's just genius.
Yeah.
But other than that, on more techie terms, there's been a couple of interesting things that have gone on. The first one actually is to do with how you handle SQL. And also kind of how you run your SQL. If you're a terminal guy, I know that when I spoke to Adam Watham, on Full Stack and kind of in general, like in this podcast, I've been very much a proponent of Navicat. But actually I've made the switch now. Initially it was to data grip. which is a product from JetBrains. And actually, one of the people nicely in the comments from that episode I did mention Data Grip. So that was the kind of first, so I appreciate that. But yeah, so, you know, Data Grip. And then I've kind of just moved to PHPStorm. So actually, really, a lot of the features that are in Data Grip are in PHPStorm as well. So if you're using, you know, one of the JetBrains IDEs, I'm pretty sure, you know, you'll probably get some of this functionality. Some of the wins out of it that I really do love now is the fact that you know, with queries and stuff, when you get into big queries and pretty gnarly ones, you know, you can get into like inner square, you know, you have like queries within queries, subqueries and things like that. And sometimes you want to run, you know, maybe a subset of that query, you know, maybe the you know, the inline, you know, the inner subquery as opposed to the outer bit. And you can do things like that really easily just with keyboard shortcuts within like PHPStorm or with Data Grip, and that is just a lifesaver to me. The other ones that are really good are the fact, I mean, it's got like the IntelliSense and all those kind of, you know, fun things that you really want out of kind of a SQL thing, but also is the fact of, so this was a really good win actually, is the parameterization. So if you're, say, you know, you've got a PDO query and it's got parameterized, you know, kind of you parameterize, say, a couple of the fields that you're requiring input in, it will actually, if you try and execute that, it will actually ask you what do you want to replace those with and substitute them with when you're running it, which to me is just a complete win. But I know that obviously you have strong opinions on the hatred of PHPStorm.
Yes.
And that was one thing actually that we need to discuss. We need to, what was it? We're going to do a Twitter poll, because my last Twitter poll went really well like a couple of years back. I think it was you, and actually it was just you. Just me. It wasn't me. It was just you, I think, that voted. But yeah, we're going to do a Twitter poll. It's PHPStorm versus, so what is your editor of choice then at this time?
We're talking about SQL editor here. Like SQL GUI.
I suppose. See, this is the funny thing. I suppose that being an IDE is you kind of then get everything, because then I'm thinking PHPStorm is my IDE for PHP. Then it's the fact that I can do database stuff with it, and it's really everything and anything.
Basically, my setup is Sublime Text and then PGAdmin, and then if I'm using MySQL, I just use MySQL Workbench.
Are you using PGAdmin 3 or 4?
4 now.
How are you finding that?
I really like it, to be honest. I know you hate it, but I mean, some of the stuff you were just talking about, like running the inner SQL sort of commands you've got, that would be nice. So are we saying you can't do that in PGM? I've never even tried.
I don't think you can. I mean, I think it's so readily out the box, you know, as one of the things that it can do in this. So I'm not quite sure, but I mean, I don't mind PG. PGAdmin 3 was good, you know, but I was always Navicat, and then even back from when we used to work, you know, Navicat. You know, I think you get used to things, don't you? And when you just want something to work, and it's like the terminal, people just want to go to the terminal and use maybe just SQL, you know, PSQL, because they're like, look, I just want to go straight to the terminal and use it that way. That's fine. Whatever works best for you. I like being able to see the query and kind of modify it like I would code, as opposed to kind of, you know, having to copy and paste it back in, and, you know, control A and up back to the beginning of the blooming command and all this type of stuff. It's really kind of,
I think for a free tool, I really can't knock PGAdmin 4. It does everything I need to do.
I mean, the fact that it's free, but it's a very weird thing actually, because what they've done is they said, you know, they used to use Qt and like PHP and then PGAdmin 3.
Yeah.
And then they've decided, okay, well, we want to make this kind of multi-platform. So what they've done is they've actually made it web-based, essentially. And what it is it's like, you know, a web interface kind of thing, which is wrapped in an application, but the actual back end is a Flask Python application, which is very weird. I've never seen someone do this. So it's essentially all the code back end is Python. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it is this. Like, I've been looking at it. It's like it is a Flask application back end, and then it is just like jQuery kind of, you know, GUI JavaScript stuff.
Right.
Front end. So it will work on multiple platforms. But yeah, a very interesting way of kind of getting about, you know, to make it multi-platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we will do a Twitter poll. I will do this when this is released. We'll do the Twitter poll, and it'll be PHPStorm versus Sublime Text. Then are you proponent of? I was going to say you actually that, you know, much, because I know you just don't like PHPStorm, but I don't know why exactly.
I just found personally that it did not run smooth on my system. I mean, I might not have the highest spec, but
I was thinking 1999 hardware. You know, could be the problem, Jake.
I mean, my Amstrad is still running strong, so, you know, I mean, I've got 16 gig of RAM. I don't know, it just did not work well. I found it really, really clumsy. Maybe it's got better since I used it, to be honest with you.
I think years ago, give it a second chance, personally. But that's just me, and, you know, I am biased to it now.
Yeah, like for me, one of the things I am a real proponent of is this idea that we're still in a position where people can open up Notepad and create websites. That to me is really important. And so when things start to get too big, I kind of pull away from it. I guess it's just my nature.
I suppose it is that Unix philosophy of doing one job and doing it well. Like you could say, that really you should use DataGrip and you should use PHPStorm for two separate things because they're solving two separate problems. Or, and then you could think like, again, breaking out a text editor and just using that for writing things as opposed to maybe executing your tests and stuff and having those integrated. And that's with the IDEs. I think IDEs are this kind of mesh of everything because it is very weird to say, I also handle my database connections in here. And I can also handle my virtual servers within here and Vagrant instances and SSH, I understand like that kind of it is everything and anything and you get into the world of it, but I love it as a program, as like a kind of ecosystem for development. Yeah. I really am a big proponent of it.
I mean, it's no Dreamweaver. That's all I'm saying.
No, well, this is it. I mean, you were back in... Man, Dreamweaver.
Oh, is that still going?
Back in the day. I don't know. Dreamweaver MX.
Wow.
Oh, dear. Back in the day. But anyway, other than that, there is a couple of things I would really like to talk about or just kind of mention. So one thing actually that's, a plague for all JavaScript development, nowadays really, is the idea of polyfills and the idea of old browsers.
Yeah.
You want to use a new feature, and the lovely thing with Webpack and like using React and stuff is obviously, and Babel and things, it will, kind of add the polyfills in for you there. But if you just want to, I just want to make simple little bits on the page, a couple of little things, maybe showing things, hiding things, whatever, a bit of conditional logic, whatever like that with JavaScript. But I want to use some of these new, things that require, in certain cases, polyfills.
Yeah.
Well, there's an actual service, and I can't believe I haven't found this one, or I didn't even think about it myself. It's one of those ones where a developer's just like you would think like, aha, this is absolutely absolutely clever. It's called Polyfill.io, and what it is, and we've been incorporating into our stack, and what it is essentially is it's a service that all you do is it requests a JavaScript file from it. It uses the user agent string of that requests browser, and then based on that browser request user agent string, it will bring down all the polyfills that it requires to be up to a certain state, that you want to be at. So if you say, I want everything to have FET, or I want everything to at least be on the stage of like ES6, or there's like presets of, I want it to have the contains and all these kind of things. It will just polyfill those for all browsers, but it will not add the polyfill in and obviously transfer it down the wire to the user if it doesn't need to. Because, in certain browsers, like once it gets up to Chrome and stuff, it's fine. And also it will cater the polyfills for particular browsers. The way your polyfill in IE may be different to Firefox. So it's just a great tool and it works, absolutely amazing. And it's one of those things where it takes a pain, and a headache out of thinking, oh, how am I going to wrap and encapsulate all these polyfills and only conditionally include them if I need them? Because you don't want to be, pumping down all this stuff to a browser that doesn't need it. Just for it to go, oh, if the prototyping doesn't exist, I do exist, so I ignore this whole bit. So I'm a big fan of that.
Plus one, you told me about it, and I decided to go for it, and I couldn't get hold of you, so I went to your employer's website and went through the source code and found it, and it is absolutely amazing, and I completely agree with you. Can't believe it wasn't done before, or I hadn't thought about it.
I know, this is how many, the condition project on a user agent string. I mean, it's just a clever idea. It's just like that aha moment of like, you've just nailed it, because exactly that, you only want to bring down what you need to bring down. Obviously it is going to be one more request. You can kind of think of that if you really want to, that maybe you bundling your JavaScript assets and then you've got this, but to take the pain out of like the whole page now, just including these bits that you want. Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer.
I think I told you, but I had some guy who was emailing me saying that whenever he logged in, he just got a white screen of death. And as soon as I put in that polyfill, then it
really?
Fine. Yeah.
It wasn't your design then. I thought the white on white is making a comeback. It never was here, was it? I don't think it ever did. No. Kind of wasn't present, but but it is something. The white on white.
Yeah, but that was an ES6 thing I had in there, and I don't know. I don't know why like the transpile thing hadn't sorted that out. I'm not really sure, but I put that in.
Some of them, you have to kind of. I mean, it depends on what you're then targeting as well. Like you're saying that it's targeting this kind of platform that should already have it, or I'm not sure exactly if some of them you do have to kind of explicitly do the polyfills for. Whereas, some of them they will include with it. But this is just a nice way of being able to say, look, this whole page now, anything on it, I can use this as I would anything else, and it should hopefully.
Who was the author of that? Was it like one of the big? I'm sure it was someone like The Guardian or something like that. When I went to the website,
you know what? Let's actually.
It was someone big who could actually maintain that.
Because it is an open source project now, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
It's hosted by Fastly and the Financial Times.
Financial Times, that's it.
Oh yeah, the contributor's led by the team at Financial Times. So yes, you can definitely, kind of go by the fact that it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a great idea. And it's just one of those things where you're just like, aha moment. And it's just like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, there was another thing that I've been doing. And this is kind of completely off the radar. So the 3310's making a comeback.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you can finally get a 3310 again,
£60.
And one of the things I used to...
£60 apparently for the
£60. I know it's that price where you're just like, oh, you could grab one, couldn't you? Just for the fact, just for kind of reminiscing.
Yeah.
Do you remember you used to like take off all the cases, have different cases on, go down this dodgy market and get like this horrible plastic case that would fade immediately? Oh yeah, those were the times. And obviously one of the nice things was you got Snake, but also you had the ability to make your own ringtones. And I'm worried to think of the amount of hours I spent typing in key codes to try and like make Mission Impossible or The Simpsons or whatever. So yeah, but I decided, well, hang on a minute, can we make this? Like, could I kind of just, maybe actually, develop like a small little web application that just generates these tones for us, and fortunately, there was a really interesting project someone had already done, and he'd already done it in F#, and he had gone to the extent of like, I think he'd done it for an actual Pluralsight course, but he'd like gone through and he's using like a parser combinator, like he's parsing the actual structure of it in such a cool way using parsers, and then he's making and actually encoding the sounds like from actual like the notes, the octaves and all this kind of stuff, and if it's sharp or whatever, into actual frequencies that are then generated and created into a sine wave into the WAV format, and then you can actually then essentially you can play them in WAV format and it will generate it for you. I thought that just blew my mind. Started looking at source code, and then it really made me started looking at how like audio is actually encoded in digital form, and it's just super interesting. Like learning about sampling and quantization and all this kind of stuff. And I've got a couple of links I'll put in the show notes for some videos and stuff I've been listening to, and watching, and then some things I've been reading about. But the first step that I've done, and I've got it, so it's working. So I'm not going to go down the parser combinator route. I think I'm just going to do simple regex stuff. And what I've done is I've broken it out. So I've got a simple regex, and it's all going to be done in JavaScript. So simple regex and a JS bin. And like I'm going to do it in there. And then what I've done is I'm currently using a library called band.js that actually just simplifies generating, because you can use the web API to do quite a similar thing and like make the frequencies. So it's encapsulating that logic for me now, that hard part. So, I'm able to just pretty much transfer it from the code format that Nokia used into what we need for this. But then what I'm hoping to do, the next step, is actually replace that band.js with my own, working out the frequencies and then actually generating the tones using an oscillator and stuff in the web browser. And then eventually go to WAV form. But it's really interesting, and it's one of those things where you can just spend so long just kind of like going down it's that whole yak shaving thing where you just start learning about one thing and you're like, oh no, now I need to know what the hell quantization is and all this kind of sampling, and then it makes you go aha moments of like realizing why like against certain formats, or not so against like it's that sampling rate is the reason why, or with the bit rate it's at and things like that, and why they're proponents of like certain bit rates and things. And yeah, it's super interesting.
See, I can see how you had time to do this before you had a girlfriend, but now you've got a girlfriend. How do you find the time to do this?
Yeah, that's the good point, actually, isn't it? I don't know. Like, it's funny because it's only like probably about half hour or so a night. Okay. Just kind of like, and it's just like, and it is just like when I've got half hour, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just have a little look and have a little see.
It is awesome. I can't wait to see what you've done.
But it'll be fun. And the thing is, it's a lot bigger project than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But I think breaking it out into dealing with what. Band.js, dealing with something that will simplify that for me first. Then I'll go into doing the web stuff. Then I'll go into the WAV stuff. But fortunately, I mean, to be honest, the hard work of the end result is actually all in this F# project this guy's done. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. And it's just super interesting. And it's also really interesting, like learning more about F# and things, and kind of how you would deconstruct the problem in F#.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds awesome.
But yeah, other than that, that is me. I mean, I know you've got maybe a couple of bits and bobs that you may want to discuss.
Really, the only other stuff is, so I've been reading the same book that you've read, I believe, which is the ES6 and Beyond book, which is part of a series of books.
Yes, very good book.
Very good. Yeah, really enjoying that. I'm only about 60 pages in, but there's just a lot more to ES6 than maybe what I knew about. When I say a lot more, I mean a hell of a lot more, really. And it's really, really enjoying it. I think I said to you, but you can't read it quickly. Like, you've got to take in the examples and go for it. I think it's the kind of book I'm going to have to read twice, to be honest with you, to really soak a lot of stuff in. But I think one of the things that the author talks about is the idea of kind of all the flair of ES6 and the stuff you get versus like the readability of the code. And he kind of says, well, look, use this, but use it wisely, because what's the point in thinking, oh yeah, great, I've used all this stuff, and then the next guy comes and works on your code and he just hasn't got a clue what you're doing. So I could definitely see a lot of pitfalls there. I'm not saying that's a reason not to use it, but it's just, I definitely think it's something to be aware of, I guess. But I'm liking a lot of stuff that I'm seeing there, and I like the arrow function. That's really nice. The arrow operator and stuff. So yeah, that's a really good read. I recommend that to anyone. And yeah, the other thing I've had is probably not the most exciting topic, but one of the gotchas I had the other day was with, I think I mentioned it earlier, but sort of our emails that go out, because obviously we've got a lot of subscribers and we have a lot of daily reports that go out, and we also allow our users to create automated reports, which they can be sent out hourly, daily, weekly, whatever they want to do. So we've got a lot of emails going out, and we suddenly realised, looking through our logs, that some of our emails were not getting through to our users.
That's scary. That's not what was it from your end as well, or was it just throughout the process? Yeah,
we're using Mailgun. So it was on the tier that we were using the free tier, and it was on like a shared IP, and it had been working fine for weeks. But I guess the issue with that is you don't know who you're sharing that IP with, and they only just have to send out one broadcast with bad material that suddenly then has an impact on the IP. And whilst Mailgun say that they do review them all and check everything's working fine, obviously there's got to be a bit of a lag there before they can work out who it is, what's going on.
And I suppose because you're on the free tier as well, they're probably not as worried. They're probably their answer would be go to a paid tier where this wouldn't be the case with fixed IP.
We've now paid for a dedicated IP with a neutral reputation. So so our first emails kind of went out this morning.
What's a neutral?
It's really got no reputation because it's not been used before. It is brand new. So as a result, obviously, you could still go through to junk because you've got no reputation. We're really not sure at this moment in time. We weren't really able to get a definitive answer from Mailgun, but we did find a lot of our emails this morning had been rejected. Well, no, they hadn't been rejected. They'd gone through to the users, but certainly the ones that I was getting and another guy at the company that I'm working for, they were getting emails and they were saying, this could be a spoof content, etc. So it's a real minefield, to be honest with you.
Down the rabbit hole, that man.
Yeah, and I was hoping Mailgun would take care of all that for us, to be honest with you. So this isn't me slagging off Mailgun, by the way, because I have to say that their support's been really good. So,
but
no, I've raised a ticket with them to find out if it's something that we've done wrong. But it is a minefield, and again, talking about how the impact of bugs has on our kind of conversions. It's the same with the emails, because emails are really important, and if people are getting useful information day by day, it encourages them to log in and get the best out of the application. So it is really important, and I guess I'll have more to say on it next episode, but it's definitely something to be aware of. And the other thing I was going to say is, at the beginning of the episode, we were talking about how now I've got a bit more time to stand back and have a look at things, but also spoke about technical debt as well. But I think part and parcel with that, something that I'm finding now is because I'm using lots of other third-party applications like Pusher, Datadog, Mailgun, as mentioned, all those kind of things. You then do have this responsibility to check that you're not going over your quotas. And okay, some of them will allow you to go into the next tier, and then you'll get reminders and stuff. But some of them aren't. Some of them are more strict, and they'll just cut you off when you get to that threshold. So it is another level of, I don't want to say technical debt, but it is another thing to keep an eye on. And it's really difficult. And because they're all separate applications, you have to log into those separate applications to find out what's going on. They're not all in one place. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, how many do you use on a day-to-day basis? I don't know. Are you allowed to talk about that, or
what, the kind of like external third-party applications?
Yeah,
or like services, I suppose. I mean, yeah. So we use SendGrid is our base email sender.
Yeah,
and we use them a lot, and then we use Pusher for pushing, like for channel things, and obviously like SNS for push notifications for the iOS app. And then other third party stuff really is kind of like monitoring tools and things, is like Datadog and Loggly.
Yeah,
and but then because we're using them every day, and PagerDuty as well, it's it's things that you keep an eye on.
Yeah,
and you just have to, as you say, keep an eye on to make sure your quotas aren't met. I mean, we find like in Loggly, making sure that typically there's like a gradual kind of like the because it only stores 14 days worth in Loggly, and the data we typically have will meet a certain tier. But I think they will give us a nudge, like say, okay, well, you've reached your max today. We're not going to be able to throw, but then tomorrow, you can obviously buy more. But it is that thing of kind of, when a change happens, or if you are going to consider logging more data or monitoring more things, you have to really consider then, okay, is the package we're on right? And do we need to make any changes there before we get into, as you say, a problem where you're like, crap, right, okay, I'm lost everything. I've gone from logging, at least something to I wanted to log a lot more, but now I can't log anything. So
yeah. I think it's it's not too bad if you work in a team, but if you're just a one-man band, it's hard.
It's that divvying it up. It must be, it's trying to divvy it up, isn't it? And kind of changing context as well between managing DevOps kind of server side stuff to server setup stuff to monitoring to okay, how my emails coming out to learning. Okay, well, why does email IP addresses matter so much, and realizing what a neutral IP address is, and kind of, as you say, you want to try and delegate as much of that off, but when a problem happens, that's when you have to then think, oh crap, actually I own to the user, to your user, you are the whole sum of its parts, aren't you? You are, but what an email is, like when they say, oh, I didn't get that email, it's your fault in their eyes, as opposed to you can't be like, well, no, it's not my fault, it's Mailgun's fault. It's that kind of, you have to take responsibility, I suppose, and then it's that, it's a hard one, isn't it?
And what about the graceful degradation side of things? Say Pusher went down, okay, unlikely, but say it did, how would that affect your application? Do you feel confident that, I mean, are you just using it for extra kind of niceties, or is it sort of pivotal to the way that the system...
What's that like? You mean Pusher, sorry?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So Pusher is just a nicety. It's the, we don't use it for any critical things. It's really kind of, the only thing it does, it aids us with, or helps us, is that when, say, like a lead comes in for a person, new lead comes in for a person, or a new message, we fire off that off, and then they will see like a little notification if they're actually in the actual leads application at that time. With push notifications, the thing as well, they're all kind of, they are, just niceties, but, obviously people do rely on them a lot, because, there's a case, where you could think like, okay, I'll get a push notification, especially, and this is SNS type stuff, but if it doesn't come in, come through until like an hour later, people could be shortlisted for that, and that lead's already taken.
Yeah.
So sometimes time is a big, kind of thing. But with the Pusher stuff, Pusher in particular, it's very much that is just a,
added layer,
added thing. I mean, the emails are interesting, because emails, we do get all the reports back from SendGrid to see if it was bounced, to see, if it was delivered, when it was opened and stuff, because they record a lot of information, and that helps us work out certain things. And, based on these certain things, like, say if someone signed up, but then their emails are bounced, we then will get in contact with them, because we're like, well, hang on, you gave us a duff email address, or what's wrong with this email address, and things like that. And it goes through a lot of our notifiers and things to make sure that, what's coming in. Yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's funny with third-party services, because you're going to have, when you get to a site, you're going to have to use them for nothing, for anything. I mean, really, it depends, what you define a third party as is a bit of code that you don't know about, that isn't yours. So even at a dependency level, you're relying on code that you don't know about, and it's a third party. The fact that you're using PHP is a third party. The fact that PHP is using C is a third party, and the fact that you're using hardware that's got any abstraction layer is a third party. So it's an interesting one. It's picking them, but then it's also, and I think that's the beauty of obviously a good design, is it's able to switch, but then obviously people over engineer on that to be like, I want to be able to change my my database layer at any time, and it's like, well, do you really though? Is that really something you're going to do?
Yeah.
It's like that whole thing of like, these ORMs, and it's the fact that you're abstracting on top of it to be like, I can change it wherever and whenever I want. I don't want to use Oracle anymore. I want to use, my MS SQL or whatever. And it's like, but do you though? Why don't I take advantage of that platform and just, kind of, you have to jump in the deep end with certain products and certain things and being like, okay, this is what I'm using, and I'll, move if I have to at certain points, but you can't be wishy-washy.
No, I guess the thing you've got to be careful of, if you're using loads of these services, like you say, a lot of them is just part and parcel of what we do. But I guess if you're not careful, you could end up with some huge Jenga tower, and suddenly you pull away one of them, and everything collapses.
It's the bus factor, isn't it? If someone comes in, what is your code? Your code is all the code that you have in your servers, okay? Yeah. But then you realize, okay, well, this is actually talking to a lot of other services that then have configuration in themselves, have set up in themselves. Is that other code that you've now made? It can go very much like a spider web of things that you need to kind of bear in mind. But then the trouble is, it's the trade-offs, isn't it? Because, okay, you say I don't want to use any third-party software at a level, then you're like, all right, I want to build everything. Like, I want to build my own email system then. It's like, do you really want that problem? Why don't you just rely on them dealing with it? And I think because obviously now these have become kind of de facto things that should happen. Like, you should just be able to send emails. And to be honest, you can on your own box. You can send emails on your own box. The trouble is when you get, like you're having now, a sufficient size, and you start sending out bulk emails on your box, and you realize they're not sending anymore, and then you realize all of the ISPs and all the email providers have blocked you because they think you're spam. That's when you have a problem, and you think, oh crap, this is why you pay someone else to deal with the problem, and you use another abstraction that you don't have to deal with that problem.
Yeah. So one final thing, and not at all because I'm going to be doing this afternoon and I want your opinion, but so I think we spoke about it before, and I think you've read. Have you read? Is it Phil Sturgeon's book, The APIs You Won't Hate? Is that?
Oh yes.
So I need to read that.
Definitely.
I definitely need to read that.
I think you definitely do, and definitely. I mean, we've had him on recently, and it was such a great episode.
Yeah, but one of the things I was going to speak about was this whole idea of what you're returning to the user, your resource or whatever, and those fields. How important is it to not reveal your schema?
You know what, right? Okay, so it doesn't really matter in my head, but you shouldn't be it's not the fact that I want to say change created at to published at or something, to masquerade it just for sheer masquerading. What you want to do with a resource though is you may want it's a sum of parts of multiple bits of data.
Yeah.
You should be thinking of a resource not as a actual entry in a database table, as opposed to its own thing that is an abstraction on top of multiple things. So
you should always have like a bridge, like an adapter that is
you could
database schema or whatever.
Yeah. You could never, because even with things like GraphQL and stuff, the idea is that, the whole thing, with the REST thing is that you are changing from state to state to state. And the idea is that, it's providing actions and things that can actually, aid going through these states and stuff and displaying things that are relevant within that. That isn't the same as what is stored in your database. Your database is stored in a normalized fashion, in a certain way. And the same with things like GraphQL. Obviously, GraphQL is that whole thing of I can create my own, I can ask for the information in a certain format. But, there's abstraction that it's not what the actual representation is in the data store. GraphQL still comes along and then says, okay, then, right, you want this in this format. This is how I get it and stuff. So I know that there have been in the past where people have developed kind of almost like it is just an abstraction on top of a relational database system where it's oh, yeah, and you can just do select queries using a GET request. And they actually, format it in a certain way that allows you to do this. And yeah, no,
I've seen that is the way on Stack Overflow a few times. Yeah.
And then the thing is, you can do optional fields, and you can do you can pass in stuff to say, look, I require these fields to be in here, and it will generate them. But it doesn't matter that that field is to do with that a specific column in a database. It's not that you're thinking of. You're thinking more of the fact of the actual domain logic, and as opposed to the persistence of it.
But are you not introducing some sort of latency in the fact that you're making this call to your database to get the data, and then you're then putting it into...
but it depends on what you're trying to do, though. So, what are you trying to, is the database perfectly mapped to what you're is your persistence layer perfectly in line with what you want as domain logic, as what you want the business intelligence to be?
I think, like you say, I mean, this data is going to come from multiple tables and combined into one resource.
And that's when it will be useful, and that's what the user wants to see, as opposed to them having to pull in and know way too much about all these different bits to then pull it in themselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've done that before. I've seen like abstractions, and I think I actually created one, like, where it's just like, the idea of like, yeah, look at this, I can generate SQL queries, like, through this, and then this must be an API that's awesome. And then you realize, no, because it doesn't provide you with the multiple flexibility, because it really actually hinders you. Because although you can think like up front, like within, the query, within the request, I'm like saying, I want this to be this. You're then actually tying the fact that those queries that now you require your database to look like that, or you're going to have translation logic.
Yeah.
And really, the way you think of persistence to what you think of actual logic, it's like the idea of repository, DDD, where you're thinking of how you store it doesn't matter. It's what you're representing and what's domain logic. And then the repository's problem is to deal with persistence and how you convert it into either a relational database, is it a flat file, whatever you're doing. It doesn't really matter how it stores it. It's just a storage mechanism. And that is just a storage mechanism.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think API is an absolute minefield and a headache. And I know that when I release this API to like hundreds of subscribers, you're not going to please everyone, right? And there's going to be people who are going to have their opinion.
Absolutely, man. Because they're all going to be asking. And the thing is at least give something. And then, you have to work on it, and obviously the versioning. But I would definitely recommend Phil Sturgeon's book. I mean, definitely. It's a great read. And it's really kind of like, the nuts and bolts of everything. And it was great having him on the show again a couple of episodes back, to kind of discuss all these API things and kind of misnomers and stuff like that. Actually, one last thing I would mention, actually. So, post a job form. We have a post job form on our website. And one thing I was doing was form validation, inline form validation. So we all do the whole client server side validation stuff.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting way of kind of dealing with it. So kind of like, you play around with whole delegation, and you have like these callback chains from hell, but it was actually the way I built it. I was quite happy with the solution, actually, and it would be cool to discuss. So what I did was I had this idea of a validator, and then you passed in like, a kind of, it would be like the ID. So when, say like a field, you linked it to an ID of whatever like that field input was, so it could grab the input from it, and then it would be, okay, this is a function that what you do is you pass in the value that it is, and you pass in a callable, which is success, or a callable that's error. On success, you don't have to pass anything, you just invoke it, or on error, you pass what the error is. And it's very similar to like the promise-based approach. And it's that continuous passing style, essentially delegating, like I call this, but really it's deciding when to next, call the next thing to do. And it worked really well. And it's great for things like, fetching, maybe we wanted to fetch the postcode, from our database to validate that and things like that. So being able to do that delegation through this, and it also meant that you could extract out and not worry, like, the way that I validate, the actual definition of the validation, like definition of what I need to validate and how to do it can be broken away from actually how to create the validator. And it's not, restricted to that, because it is just a fact of, you're passing in a function that requires this and stuff like that. So the validator way of validating could change, but you could still use the same rule set. But I was really, really happy with it. And it's fun, like kind of playing with JavaScript in that way, and playing with the CPS, way of doing things, because continuous passing style it can be very funky, but it is very interesting and kind of a really powerful tool at certain points.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap it up, isn't it? So
yeah, all right, man. Well, it's been a great episode talking to you again, man. A good catch up, and let's carry on coding. That's it. That's the new Saturday. It's been a great episode.
Yeah,
carry on coding.
I like it.
All right, then. Bye, audience.
Cheers. Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com, or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.